He gave his last water to two stranded Apache girls in the desert, unaware that their tribe would come riding at sunrise. Honor, danger, and trust collided at his ranch. Like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Watching from? Let's get started. The Arizona sun beat down with an intensity that made the sand shimmer and the air feel like it could set fire to your skin. The riverbed had been dry for weeks, and even the hardy desert plants wilted under the unrelenting heat. Sheriff Cole Turner had ridden out before dawn, checking fences and making sure the livestock had water, but it was a task that felt increasingly hopeless. Each step of his horse kicked up dust that stung his eyes. He had grown accustomed to the isolation, the harshness of this land, and the knowledge that every day was a battle against the elements. By mid-morning, he spotted movement near a stretch of cracked earth where the river had once flowed. At first, he thought it might be an animal, struggling in the sun, but as he drew closer, he realized they were human. Two young Apache girls lay half-buried in dust, their bodies limp, clothes torn, and baked by the sun. Their breaths came in shallow gasps, and their lips were dry, cracked, and bleeding. They looked almost like mirages, fragile shapes against the unforgiving landscape, and Cole felt a surge of fear and responsibility he hadn't expected to encounter today. He dismounted quickly, letting the reins fall loose over the saddle horn. The girls didn't move as he approached, only blinked slowly as if they weren't sure he was real. He crouched down beside them, feeling the heat radiating off the parched earth through his boots. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked gently, his voice rough from disuse. One of the girls coughed, rasping through cracked lips, and the other shifted slightly. Cole scanned the area. No adults in sight, no other travelers. It was just them and the scorching, empty desert. His mind raced. Leaving them meant certain death. Taking them meant risk. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out the last water bottle he had. There wasn't much, barely enough for a single man for the day, but he didn't hesitate. He poured a little into his cupped hands and held it to their lips. The older girl leaned forward first, her tongue catching the cool liquid eagerly. The younger one followed, shaking with relief and weakness. Their eyes met his, wide and uncertain, filled with gratitude but also fear. Cole realized instantly that he had just made a choice he couldn't undo. By saving them, he had invited danger into his life. Lifting them both carefully, one in each arm, he carried them back toward his ranch. The horses whinnied softly, sensing the tension in the air. The sun seemed to weigh heavier with each step, pressing down on his shoulders. He could feel the weight of responsibility in every movement. If anything happened to them under his care, he would be the one to answer for it, not just in law but in conscience. The dry riverbed fell away behind him as he pushed forward, his mind torn between fear and determination. The journey back was slow and tense. Each rustle of the sparse brush, each caw of a distant crow made him flinch. He scanned the horizon constantly, aware that the desert could hide both friend and foe. The girls rested against his chest as he walked, trusting him entirely despite the world they had already survived. Their trust was fragile, but it was enough to fuel his resolve. He thought of his father, a man who had taught him that kindness in a harsh world was always a gamble. Today, that lesson had become real, and it weighed heavier than the heat or the dust. By the time the ranch appeared over a rise, Cole was sweating through his shirt and boots, and the girl's strength was fading with each step. He set them gently on the shaded porch, letting the wooden boards absorb their weight. He fanned his hat back, breathing hard, and realized that he had never felt more exposed. In his life, out here the desert was indifferent, and people were even more so. But these two lives now rested in his hands. He would not fail them, no matter the cost. Inside the small cabin, Cole set the girls down on worn blankets he had thrown across the floor for comfort. He handed them a tin cup filled with water, their hands shaking as they took it. One of the girls whispered something in a language he didn't understand. He nodded, not entirely sure if it was a thank you or a warning. Their eyes darted toward every window, every shadow, every corner of the cabin. He realized with a sudden chill that they were survivors in a land that had chewed up countless travelers. Their wariness was born of necessity, not fear. Cole took a seat across from them, letting the fire warm his back. The girls didn't speak, but their presence filled the cabin with a tense energy. He could feel it pressing against him, a reminder that every action he took from this point forward would have consequences. He had broken the silence he had maintained for years, a life lived cautiously, deliberately alone. Now, his home was a refuge for two strangers, and he knew instinctively that this act of kindness could bring more than gratitude. It could bring conflict, challenges, or even danger from those who wouldn't forgive his interference. He glanced out the window toward the dry riverbed, thinking of the path that had led them here. The sun was now high in the sky, unrelenting, and the land beyond. His fence stretched endlessly, full of both opportunity and peril. He thought of the Apache families, their pride, their fierce sense of justice. By giving water to their daughters, he had crossed into their world, whether he intended to or not, and that crossing would come with consequences. Still, he could not regret it. He had done what he knew was right. As the afternoon faded into evening, Cole watched the girls finally begin to rest, blankets wrapped tightly around their shivering shoulders. The tension in the room softened slightly, though neither of them let their guard down completely. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat silently, thinking about the choices he had made and the challenges that might still lie ahead. The desert outside glowed orange with the last rays of sunlight, painting the ranch in hues of gold and red. The wind shifted, carrying the distant cries of crows and the faint scent of dust and sage. The long, lonely silence of the past had ended with a knock at his gate, and he knew nothing would ever be the same again. The sunrise spilled across the Arizona desert, golden light stretching over the dry, cracked earth. Cole Turner stepped onto the porch just as a distant rumble reached his ears. At first, he thought it might be cattle moving, but the vibration was too deep, too rhythmic. The ground itself seemed alive beneath his boots. Then he saw them, a long line of Apache riders, hundreds of them, forming a wall across his gate. Their painted faces glimmered in the morning sun, and the glint of their weapons and the shine on their horses made it clear they had come with purpose. The girls he had saved the day before clung to one another inside the cabin, their wide eyes pressed against the wooden walls. Cole could feel their fear and tension, yet he also sensed pride in them, a quiet satisfaction that he had kept his word and given them life. He had known that helping them might provoke retaliation, but seeing the riders now made the risk terrifyingly real. The dust rose around their horses like a living, breathing entity. Every rider radiated strength and discipline. This was not a random raid. They were here deliberately, and the chief's presence among them spoke volumes. The chief dismounted slowly, every movement commanding respect. His eyes locked on Cole's, burning with a mixture of gratitude, suspicion, and authority. He was older, tall and imposing, yet there was a calm about him that contradicted the tension of the moment. "You saved my daughters," he said, voice firm but controlled, carrying across the space between them. Cole swallowed, knowing that words alone could not navigate this delicate encounter. Now the chief continued, "We must decide what debt we owe, and what danger you now face." Every rider shifted slightly, reminding Cole that the desert could be both a blessing and a judge. Cole stepped forward cautiously, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. "I did what I had to," he said, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "They were dying." The chief nodded slightly, acknowledging the truth in his words. The younger riders whispered among themselves in their native language, their glances flicking between the chief, Cole, and the girls inside. Cole realized quickly that this was a council as much as it was a confrontation. Decisions here were deliberate and measured. There would be no hasty judgments, no rash violence. Respect and caution ruled the day. One of the elders approached, stooped slightly with age but moving with a confidence that spoke of long experience. He gestured toward the girls, who peeked nervously from behind the cabin door. "They are strong," he said quietly. "You have acted with honor. That is rare among your people." Cole nodded, his throat tight. He had lived long enough in isolation to know that honor could not be measured by words alone. The girls' lives were now intertwined with his own, and the balance of power had shifted subtly in favor of those who valued courage and kindness. The chief stepped closer, scanning Cole from head to toe, his eyes sharp and calculating. "You understand that water is life," he said, "and to give the last of it to those in need, you have risked much. But there is more at stake than you know." Cole's mind raced. The desert had always been merciless, but the tribe's presence introduced new challenges he hadn't anticipated. Yet, for the first time in years, he felt part of something larger than himself. The girls had opened a door to trust and honor that he had long closed. Now it was his choice how to walk through it. The younger warriors dismounted, forming a semicircle around the girls and Cole. Their eyes were wary, watching for any sudden movement. Cole realized the message was clear. This was not merely gratitude, but a test of his intentions, his courage, and his respect for their customs. He spoke again. "I did what I could. I am not seeking reward." The chief's eyes narrowed slightly, evaluating, weighing every word. Then he nodded, a small smile breaking the sternness of his face. There was approval there, but it came with the understanding that respect must continue to be earned. The girls slowly stepped out from the cabin, their hands brushing against Cole's arm briefly as they passed. They looked back at the chief and the riders, standing taller than before, proud and unafraid. The chief's expression softened. "You have proven your heart," he said, addressing Cole directly. "You are welcome here, but understand this. The desert does not forget. Those who act with kindness will be remembered. Those who do not will be found wanting." Cole nodded silently, recognizing the weight of the statement. He understood that this was both a blessing and a warning. The riders mounted their horses once more, the creak of saddles and the soft murmur of reins filling the morning air. Cole stayed on the porch, watching them prepare to leave, and the girls followed him. The chief lingered a moment longer, his gaze steady and piercing. Then he lifted a hand in silent acknowledgement. The riders fell into formation behind him, and with a coordinated motion, they turned toward the horizon. Dust rose in clouds around them, glowing gold in the morning sun. The desert swallowed them as quickly as they had appeared, leaving only tracks and the echo of hooves behind. Cole lowered himself to the porch, breathing deeply, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. The girls approached, their faces shining with relief and quiet excitement. "Will they come back?" one whispered. Cole shook his head gently. "Perhaps. Or perhaps they will let their children remember the kindness shown today." The girls nodded, understanding something larger than themselves. The ranch felt different now, alive with connection, respect, and the knowledge that one small act could ripple outward in ways unseen. He had not just saved lives, he had earned trust and honor beyond measure. As the sun climbed higher, the desert stretched out endlessly before them, harsh but beautiful. Cole turned to the girls, offering a rare smile. "You'll stay here until you are ready to continue," he said softly, "and no harm will touch you." They smiled back, the warmth of trust settling in the cabin as the wind shifted through the plains. The memory of the riders, their discipline, their strength, and their respect would stay with him forever. The past had arrived at his gate, but through courage, kindness, and careful judgment he had faced it and prevailed.